All right. Robert, you did a panel, like a week or two ago for B2B marketing in person. What were you talking
Yeah.
about?
Well, I've done quite a lot of things recently. I did a keynote at the ABM conference the week before last, where I basically introduced what I think is a new concept, which is ABM as an operating system for the commercial marketeer. So that went down pretty well, and hopefully that's going to have legs.
Will
But
you
the idea
expand
is,
on that? Because
yeah,
I feel like it feels familiar, even though I haven't used that. I haven't labeled it in such a way.
okay. Well, within B2B marketing and the community propolis, we've been talking about the commercial marketeer for the last 12 months, and that's really how do marketeers really show commercial value to the business and speak the language of the C-suite. So if you have that as the backdrop, then positioning ABM as the operating system for the commercial marketeer is basically how do they make this happen? And expanding on that, I won't have the visuals today, but ABE, account-based engagement, is business development. ABX, account-based experience, is how do you upsell and cross-sell and improve the experience of customers. And then around that, there are other apps. So account-based branding, how do you get in earlier? Buyer group marketing, how do you make sure you're covering off the entire buying group within your chosen accounts? Deal-based marketing, how do you support major bids? And partner-based marketing, which is basically how do you work with your partner ecosystem to amplify your ABM activities. So that operating system, if you like, is something relatively new, at least to me, and I'm hoping it's new to the world. It certainly seemed to land quite well with the audience on the day.
It resonates. I can still remember our conversation that Paul curated. At that time, ABM still had been around for a while, but I was still very bullish. It was pretty new to me. What you're describing, I think, helps shed some color on ABM can mean a lot of things to a lot of people.
Correct.
Right?
And the biggest challenge is defining what you want to do with it.
Stephanie, are you dabbling in the ABM universe over at Bill?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We're all in. And what's interesting is we're more on the acquisition side of ABM, nothing to do with post-sales, upsell, cross-sell yet, or even on the branding side per se, Robert. But we have been doing it for our channel motion for quite some time. It was easier to start there because it was very narrow and very specific. But we've now opened it up to more of our direct sales side. And what was one of the areas that was a bit debilitating in the beginning was our data is not great. At Bill, we have a ton of motions, right? From like a PLG motion, from a trial motion, and the amount of kind of yucky stuff that comes into the system is very high. And so that gave us a lot of challenges in the beginning, right? It made people think that we couldn't do it. So it's been, a couple of months of getting through and dissecting how do we actually move forward with the data that we have today. And we're starting to see really great results. But it took not a bunch of Zoom meetings, right? It took all of us coming together in person for a whole day and really setting expectations around what's everyone's part, what are we focused on, how are we focusing on it, and then what are the tools that we're going to use to more propel this operational expectation across the teams. And so we're doing it. We're starting to see our open rates are absurd on the new 50%. Guys, on cold, it's wow. Insane what we've started to get, but we'll see how it propels through. This offsite just happened 40 days ago. So
wow, I mean, the open rate. One of the things that I think is really fun about doing the ABM motion is when you take the time, and I feel like, Robert, I'm channeling conversations that I've had with you in the past. When you take the time to really understand the problem you're solving and the customer, and just take that added moment of empathy, you see immediate results. And a result in this case is an email being opened. I think that's honest. You can tell when you hit play pretty quickly if you have something good or if you need to be iterating very quickly.
For sure.
Well, now we're here. So Already a really good conversation. Renee, I mean, I know you're like tactical, man. You're in the weeds at Apollo, and we're going to introduce everybody here quickly now that we're at time. But based off of what Stephanie and Robert are saying, like, how does this resonate with you?
Yeah, so here at Apollo, I would say a lot of our what we classify as tier one customer base, really enterprise level customers, are almost always running some kind of ABM play. So we adjust what Apollo offers to them with the creation of personas, for instance, where we cluster titles for them so they can just go after the titles inside of those qualified companies. And the AEs really appreciate that. Also, scoring systems are available for them within Apollo out of the box, so they can add signals to those people that they're going after. Say, for example, like maybe they're recently in a new role, as an example, right? And then to your point, to what Stephanie and Robert were saying, you can better personalize to them. You could create more emotive type of messaging that's going to trigger something within them to reply. And hopefully, with some luck, you get to where Stephanie's open rates are.
So I almost want to start asking about tech stack, but I'll like save that for like the formal conversation. Everybody like that are starting to join. Hello, hello. If you want, share where you're located. You can share your role. Just to do something a little less boring, I put least favorite holiday food, and of any holiday, there's a bunch of people all over the world that tend to join these things. Brandon, what's your least favorite holiday food?
Me?
Yeah,
That's
you.
just mean.
I know. Sorry.
Man, like Thanksgiving or Christmas?
The whole thing? Oh, you mean any holiday?
No, not the whole. I'm just like, it's a question. Yeah, I don't like any of it. I'm just kidding.
I just don't like food. Liquids only.
I'm like the Grinch.
I figured.
I feel like it's so hard to say there's like a least favorite, because I feel like for Thanksgiving we always just like make what we like. So, and I like
smart.
all of it because Thanksgiving food is just top tier. And then you always have like the leftovers, which is amazing. I don't know. I don't have like a least favorite. I mean, maybe like squash, because it's not sweet potato with the marshmallows on top. It's not sugary.
That's definitely fair. I don't know if I have a least favorite either. I'm a fan of food, but I definitely do not enjoy the Stover's pre-made stuffing without like a lot of like love and TLC going into it.
I got a pretty controversial one. I just got to put it out there. I'm not a fan of cranberry sauce.
Oh man, it's like I'm kind of bougie with my food choices, but like a can of cranberry sauce, I will travel with me if I'm visiting someone else for Thanksgiving to make sure it's on the table. So don't judge me too hard. Go ahead.
I cannot stand sweet potatoes when they have sugar on them. Like, period. Like, don't put marshmallows on my savory. Don't put sugar on my sweet potato. Like, I will ask specifically for someone to take a sweet potato aside and put like butter and salt and pepper on it. I don't like sweet on my salty.
Then they come sweet already. All right, Robert. UK holidays, we share some over here in the US, but unshared or shared holiday. Do you have a favorite or least favorite holiday food?
Yeah. If we took Christmas, then I really am allergic to Brussels sprouts. I don't know if you have those in the States, but we certainly have them over here. And,
I'm in the Brussels sprout capital of the world. They're produced in Monterey County. And did you know that they've actually scientifically altered the Brussels sprout to be less Brussels sprouty over the last 30 years?
Wow. As in more edible and less disgusting then, yeah?
Exactly what they're going for. Like, they need to move more of these little Mars brains. We need to make them less terrible.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's true, though. Just to get things started, because we have a lot of things to cover, we're going to introduce the speakers in a second, but I do want to name, where are my notes here? This event is part of a go-to-market series designed to help our customer and potential customers understand the tools and processes and people that are needed to grow revenue in the new year. This conversation is geared towards established companies with moderate to large sales teams. So if that isn't you, don't worry, there still should be plenty of things that you can learn. But if that is you, I absolutely guarantee that you're going to learn a lot of things. Growth has put a series of webinars and a go-to-market playbook together in partnership with Apollo and HubSpot. So thank you to both of those organizations for trusting us with your logo. If you are interested in a software demo of either of the tools, or you want to talk to an expert, we will have QR codes and links all over the place, but this is not meant to be like a generically, shamelessly plugged event. Our goal is truly to inform and educate, and when the time comes, consult your business on growing better together. If you do have any questions throughout this chat, feel free to drop a comment and we will try to get to them. Worst case scenario, we'll follow up with you. But for everybody else, let's get this party started. I'm going to introduce our speakers. And when I share your name, tell us a little bit about yourself, your role, where you're at, and maybe one thing about go-to-market that you're really passionate about. I'm going to kick off with you, Stephanie. Stephanie Valentini, am I saying that right? VP of Sales at Bill.
Yeah, Valenti. But people do say Valentini over in Italy, so maybe you just have, more suave than most. So I'll give it to you. But yes, nice to meet everybody. Stephanie Valenti. I am the VP of Sales at Bill, and at Bill, I run our channel partnerships and direct sales organization for our AP product. So I am out of Dallas, Texas. I've been here for about 9 years, and I have a very interesting background. If you have heard my name, it's probably in the Pavilion community, but I had also been a CRO at a services-based organization, a COO running a manufacturing company, and then everything before that was always in go-to-market. So excited to be here. Lots of fun topics on the agenda for sure.
Very nice to have you here. Brand new to me, but you were already sharing so much great information. Robert Norum, you're up next. We have you as ABM and growth expert at B2B marketing, but I know you've been running your own practice for quite some time.
Yeah, thanks, Christopher. So I guess today I'm here as the ABM and demand strategy expert on Propolis, which is B2B marketing's global community for B2B marketeers, where I provide training and advisory services for their members. But I have worked independently as a marketing consultant for the last 20 years and specialized in ABM, account-based marketing, for the last 13. Today, I'm sitting in a friend's spare room in London, but I actually live in southern Spain. So I've come over for some cold weather, and it's certainly delivering.
How cold is cold?
Well, I guess compared to the US, maybe not that drastic, but it's -1 tonight, and the daytime has been between 5 and 8 degrees, which is pretty cold for me. I certainly need to wrap up when I leave the house.
I really appreciate you attending today, especially with the time difference. Next up is Renee. Renee, I want to make sure I don't butcher your name. Renee Kobar, GTM engineer and strategist at Apollo. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Kobar, yeah, I would say that's pretty close. Yeah, it's good to meet everybody here. Renee Kobar, I'm a go-to-market engineer at Apollo, been with Apollo for the last year. I've been doing outbound sales and strategy for the last half decade. At Apollo, I manage some of our most esteemed customers and build for them automations, AI research agents, and really all of the coolest kind of what we call next-gen pipe tools that are available in market today.
Awesome. Brandon, I know you pretty well, but Brandon Dithberry, he is the Director of Technical Solutions at Growth and has been my go-to-market engineer resource for years. Tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, so previously was a Director of Revenue Operations and managed go-to-market engineering and also just the cross-functional alignment for a few different organizations. Prior to that, I was a engineer and a consultant for 2 elite HubSpot partners based in Saratoga Springs, Utah. And it's getting there on the weather being cold as well, Robert. But I'm enjoying it. And yeah, it's a little bit about me.
All right. Well, I want to just state clearly, like, this event today is high level. Strategy, process, people, like all the fun stuff. We're going to have a more technical webinar in a couple of weeks. So if you're looking for the nitty gritty, like flag Renee and Brandon on LinkedIn, I cannot be of any help. I apologize. Let's see what we've got here. let's just skip the glossy stuff. We've all had launches flops. We've missed our messaging. Maybe budget goes sideways. Before we start talking about what is working, I would love for somebody to volunteer a horror story from the last year. Maybe something that's gone completely wrong.
I got
all
one.
right. Thank you, Renee.
Thank God.
I'm sure all of you have dealt with this pain, and many other people on the call as well. Email deliverability has become, it was already hell, and it's probably just gone down a few circles down in hell. It's a tough space. And, you know, there's a lot of providers now for email domains and mailboxes that you can purchase. Some point last winter, in using one of these providers, you know, we didn't realize how critical it could be to be having shared IPs, basically, which is how a lot of these providers operate, that also include bad actors that may not be following best practices for domain and mailbox and just general outreach. And so what we notice is that you get dragged down in these bad neighborhoods, they call them. And even if you did everything right, you set the correct email limits, you let the domains rest, if you will, or untouched for a couple of months. And when you go to market, what you find is that your open rates are, you know, in the low, you know, teens at best. And so this causes a lot of problems when you are managing customer campaigns and you are looking to break through quickly with replies and then objection handling. I would say that last fall and winter, Chris, this was a major issue for us because there's very little you can do. Once you're in that bad neighborhood, you're having to quickly migrate and then really restart the process over, and you do not have that time. Let me just say that I had quite a few campaigns that were on fire, just on fire. You know, code red, alarm 5, whatever you want to call it. So it was rough. That I would say. Yeah.
If you had to give one tip to keep people away from that problem, what would it be? Because I feel like it's such a common one as like a service provider. It's just such an easy one to get asked to be dragged into.
Yeah, you know, if you can, and you're running, you know, outbound or even just the inbound led outbound for your own organization, if you can have a dedicated IP address, obviously not your primary domain, but if you can create subdomains that are attached or adjacent even to your primary domain, that's probably less damaging than if you were to go and procure a brand new domain purchasing service. I would say that if you can help dealing with that and you can actually keep it in-house and nurture it on your own slowly, you're probably much better off. That would be a way to avoid that.
It's like a very timely topic at growth, to be honest. I've been championing do not use subdomains, and we are going to be testing subdomains for our outbound. So, FYI, universe.
Kind of making a bit of a comeback, actually. I think people realize that might be the better way to go.
Is it too risky for me to ask Stephanie if you guys are dabbling in subdomains? You can plead the fifth.
Gosh, you know, honestly, maybe I'll answer it like that. Public company, maybe.
Smart. So that's the smart way to go about it. Renee, I really appreciate you being willing to share that horror story. I mean, it happens, and when we're talking to customers, it's just so easy to say like, "Hey, crank out a big list, hit everybody up. What's the worst that can happen?" And the reality is like everything is the worst that can happen. Take your time. Robert, I would like, before we even hop into like the next section, I have so much appreciation for your steadfast approach to ABM. I know you've dealt with the customers that are begging to go fast and go broad quickly. How do you, when you're talking about this on your panels or you're working with an individual customer, how do you counter the almost guaranteed request to go too big, too fast?
Yeah, it's a great question, Christopher, and it does crop up, as you've probably alluded to already. I mean, for me, I think it's about focus, and it's about using your budget and resources in the smartest way possible. And spray and pray marketing to large volumes of potential customers, in my opinion, is not focused, and it's not using your budget intelligently. So I think there is an education process that says, you know, there's the total addressable market, and yes, we might want to have some kind of brand activity out there. But then when you come into to the next tier, if you like, this is targeted digital communications, advertising, whatever it might be, to a really focused group of potential accounts. And they should be based around your ICP, as in your ideal customer profile. They should be based around the accounts that you already have, where you're generating the most revenue and the most profit. And I think it's then about scaling, if you like, the number of accounts to the resources you have that are capable of following them up. You know, if you have 10 BDRs and a sales team of half a dozen people, it makes no sense at all to be doing mass marketing to 20,000 organizations. So I think it's definitely an educational process, and it's about real focus and making the right decisions. And the only way that's going to happen is if you have buy-in from the top of the organization that this is an appropriate go-to-market strategy, as opposed to marketing or BDRs or sales, you know, kind of squabbling over what's the right thing to do, lower down the organization.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Brandon and I were prepping for this yesterday, and he talked about a situation where he was involved where a particular company burned the forest of all their contacts quickly. And I thought just like that description was so fitting, also very sad. Education is tricky still though, right? Most of us, less Stephanie maybe, are on the servicing side and the consulting side. So you said something that is still pretty unique, right? ABM branding. You can still start to put your logo in front of these targeted companies and these people at the companies without burning your sending domains and necessarily trying to force the hand to go up.
Yeah, correct.
Right? I still think that's pretty new when people are thinking ABM. The desire to go fast and broad is just such a challenge. Maybe to piggyback off of that, maybe we can just hop into, let's see, bouncing around here. Let's start off with like not getting too deep into the AI topic, but what is a strategy that is actually working now? What is moving the needle? In our pre-opening, we talked a little bit. Stephanie mentioned she's already seeing 50% open rates. What do you think led to that? What is a strategy that led to that high open rate?
Yeah, so that is just specifically with the ABM campaign. But if I like back up a little bit and say like what is working today and what's changed in overall go-to-market, I think there are 1,000 things that we could pinpoint. But one of the things I always talk about is like old school was in for a while, right? And the job of a marketer and a salesperson was to educate, right? Build trust, because the knowledge of the product out there in the world wasn't there for the taking, right? It was human-led across the board. If we like fast forward into the last, 10 years, sales was a facilitator and marketing was the driver, right? So they had all of the knowledge that they needed. It was really clear, and it was driving this lead generation into sales to facilitate and continue to move on. More of your quantity play. We are not in that play anymore. So what I like to say is we are in the confused buyer market, which is forcing us to return back to that trust building, clarity, sales being a required part of the go-to-market process. And that's because there are so many competitors, there are so many tools. AI is confusing the living crap out of the consumer. And so it's like a new requirement. So if I think about what's working, it's all the stuff that worked when I was carrying a Padfolio and doing outside sales at the beginning of my career, right? It's building those relationships. It's ABM, which is personalized, targeted, knowing where you win from an ICP perspective, and going really, really narrow to go larger later. The problem is like to Robert, your point, like it is very hard to sell internally when you are a quantity game and you want a certain number of, you want a certain capacity per sales rep. You want your BDRs to produce blank amount of SQOs, right, on an ongoing basis. And now you're saying, no, but they're only going to get you 4, but they're going to be good, right? Like that is a really hard conversation to have when you're used to this high quantity game.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things that Sixth Sense have been talking about for quite a long time is the death of the MQL. And obviously, Kerry Cunningham has published a lot of content on this. And believe it or not, I'm hosting a panel in a few weeks' time live in London, which is all about, is the MQL alive and kicking? And I just had a prep call with one of the protagonists, and he said, yeah, we still track MQLs. You know, it's the wrong thing to do, but we still do it. So there is definitely, I think, a recalibration required. Yeah. And, you know, you started this section off, Christopher, talking about, you know, brand. I talk about account-based branding, because if you think about branding, you know, if you're a mid-sized company, you're not Salesforce or ServiceNow or whatever running ads in the Super Bowl halftime. You know, how do you build brand? And I think the smart route to that is you pick the companies that you want your brand to be known and famous with, and you target those organizations in an appropriate way. But that isn't about trying to close a deal in the first month. You know, if you have a 12-month sales cycle, that's a little naive. But what you're trying to do is to put yourself in front of those organizations in a meaningful way and to build that credibility and trust over time. And that, of course, then leads to conversations, meetings, dialogue, opportunities, and you're moving the dial forward. And without sounding like a Sixth Sense obsessive, you know, one of the things they've also been talking about for the last year is that 70% of the buying cycle takes place behind closed doors before the customer even engages the vendor community. By the time they do that, they have a short list of 3 to 5 vendors, and 80% of the time they go on to buy from their first choice vendor on day one. So if you're not in that short list, you've already missed the boat by the time they come to market. And that's why this account-based branding concept is so important, which is you need to be in front of the accounts that matter, the prospects that matter early and on a long-term basis. This isn't about quick short-term wins. You know, the wins will come when they're ready and the customers will buy when they're ready, but you can't force that issue.
It's what you're saying, I'm such an advocate for, but when you're in the room with the customer and they're speaking to their board, just this pressure of it's working, accelerate, dump more money into it. We need to get more deals now. It's an impossible battle to fight. And I just keep I'm like nodding my head agreeing with you, and then having like flashbacks of even like emails this morning and conversations last week. It's even with data, it's almost harder to support once this program, the train starts moving down the tracks. Everyone's like, throw more coal on it, let it rip.
I would ask Robert, Stephanie, what do you guys when meeting with customers, seeing customers, like it feels like the average contract value, which is something that we used to track quite a bit, has kind of gets lost in the conversation. I mean, if you're an organization with very high average contract values, you don't necessarily need to burn the forest or go, you know, all in. You can do an ABM approach and get, as you guys said, 4 good leads, and there you go. You know, you made your quarter's numbers, or so on and so forth. It just doesn't get talked about enough. Everybody just wants to go all in all the time, not really taking their ACV into consideration.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there we could unpack, right? So if you think about a large organization, they may have a solid ABM program on the upmarket motion, but they think that maybe it would work down market as well, right? And so, we're seeing this like really work in this upmarket motion, and we are seeing like 4 to 5 things or 4 to 5 contracts come through, and they are at a higher ACV, and we want to double down on that. Let's go do it here, right? And so that's where like disconnects start to happen. I would also say, even if you are winning, 4 to 5 really strong wins, an organization that has accelerated growth targets always wants to know how you can do more. Even if that MRR or ACV continues to grow over time, there's always a how do we double down on that, unfortunately. Fortunately, unfortunately.
It's like a dual. What do you think a reasonable duration of time is for an enterprise company or mid-market company? They've got some brand reputation, right? They've been in the market a while. They've got sales teams. They're attempting ABM. Maybe they're even going after like the Fortune 1000 companies. one of the questions you'll get pretty early on my side is like, when should we expect results? And in some cases, Stephanie, like we joked earlier, like when you send your first email and you're starting to see high open rates, there's clear indication that things are going to be moving. But even in those situations, I've had boardrooms push back and say, we need to move faster. Anybody have a fair number? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? It depends.
I think that in the agencies world, I've often seen the wrestle between 3 and 6 months. Like, should it be 3 months? Should it be 6 months before you really see results come through? So dependent, of course, by all the variables across industries that you're going after, what you're selling as well. I think with something that I know we'll discuss too later as we kind of dive more into AI, being able to democratize custom research has probably shrunk that window now. So things that signals you would have been looking for in those 3 to 6 months, you can probably uncover a lot sooner. So I can definitely see where some of that pressure is also being added on now, is that the tools are here to shrink the window size.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to take your individual average deal velocity into account. So if it normally only takes, say, 30 to 60 days to close a deal, and now all of a sudden you're layering on ABM and it's cold, and we're not using Robert's examples of like making sure that we're doing the branding that's required before it gets into the actual campaign, then maybe it's, we're normally 60 days and now you're going to say it's going to double the time because it's cold, and this is when we should start seeing outputs. But always making sure that you're baselining on what it means without ABM, and then what it means with, and what is that extended time period.
Ooh,
yeah,
it's a good
I think
dashboard to have.
the baselining, I think, is a really smart point, Stephanie, with and without ABM. And
Yeah.
clearly you should be seeing, an uplift if you're doing account-based marketing effectively. But there's so many things in play with your question, Christopher, the product and services that you're selling and the relative cost of those, the types of organizations that you're selling to. I tend to work more at the enterprise level, where the solutions being sold are 50 to 100K upwards and often into the millions. And they're often selling to enterprise organizations that have, a multi-million dollar or even $1 billion+ turnover. So in that context, you're talking about a long burn sales cycle, typically 12 months. But if you're selling lower value solutions, which are much more transactional, obviously you would expect things to be done more quickly. So I think if you're looking for a benchmark, it's got to be benchmarked on your own internal company performance, pre-ABM and post-ABM, and the other activities that we could be doing around those accounts as well.
I've thrown around the equation of, if your first year value of a customer is less than $25,000, ABM is probably not the right thing for you. The more north you go of that, and as you go past 50 and 100,000, absolutely, it is likely that it is the right play for you. Would you say that? I have not temperature checked that with any other professionals. That is my own personal. So what are your thoughts there, Stephanie?
I don't know. I think it's whatever upmarket is for you. So like, for example, at Bill, we are SMB focused, right? So like, if I think about our ICP, it's 10 to 100 employees, and that is in no way, shape, or form anything that's large scale. And so where we're playing ABM is 100+, right? And those contracts aren't all that large from a subscription perspective. Now we're a unique animal, right? Because we're subscription, and then we have payment rails. And so that is a little bit of a different motion, but we are doing it in 100+, and we are doing it with accounting firms that are, maybe 50 employees at the firm and up in a channel motion. And because that is upmarket for us, we are seeing success there. Now, if we did it again to the 1 to 100 space, and we did it in the masses, and we did it in volume where we were acquiring 4,000 new customers, right? And trying to run a play like that, it would break. But we know in 100+, we win in this industry with this buyer in this segment of that NACIS code. Like, we're not taking a NACIS code, like we're taking a NACIS code and we're double clicking, right? And selecting one of the little NACIS codes within the larger NACIS code to go ahead and go after. And then we're also looking and doing the research as to where we win, why we win within that segment. to be able to double down on it. You cannot do that when you're going after masses. So that'd be my response. I don't think it doesn't work. It just depends on your business.
And Bill also has, I think, brand reputation, which I think is like an X factor in these types of programs. Like I'm in a US based company, and so my knowledge of Bill is US. So I'm not sure how internationally if that applies, but
Yeah.
like I've had a Bill account since 2015 for my business. And just as an FYI, don't go and like check out my accounts like a fact.
Well, thanks, Christopher. We really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, the point there being, it really is an X factor. And so new to market companies, you take a company like Gamma, right? They have 50 million users, so a strong direct to consumer play. They start to approach this B2B motion. I think it's such a different conversation because there's already market penetration. There's so much PR out there. You can Google Gamma and be like, wow, and their product is great. Shameless plug. Versus if maybe you were a let's see, someone that did pre-built construction, your average contract value was somewhere in the $300,000 to $2.5 million range, but you're not like a logo brand that someone may know. So you're using these branding techniques. So let's say you want to sell into Germany and start to do your prefab building, commercial buildings there. Robert, I feel like, is that an industry that you dabble with? And am I right for kind of feeling ABM is a good play, but it also becomes very difficult when you're not a brand that has the eyeballs?
It's not an industry that I do a lot of work in, to be honest, Christopher. But I think in any context where you don't have any brand awareness, you've got to work at it pretty hard. And then the question is, how do you do that? And if you just drop into Germany and say, let's build some brand awareness in Germany from a standing start, that's a pretty tough ask. But if you pick the top 50 companies in Germany that you wanted to do business with, you could actually run a pretty compelling program to them, and within 3 months or certainly 6 months, they would know who you were and they would have engaged with your content in one way, shape or form. Now, 50 companies might sound very unambitious. Maybe it's 100, maybe it's 200, but it's not just landing in Germany. It's having a bridgehead and knowing exactly who you're going after and why you're going after them. And in that context, you've done the work up front. The account selection process is really important. Understanding those accounts, mapping out the buying groups, working out what their business drivers and pain points are. And then you're actually into a more purist form of ABM, which is why we do this stuff, right? We need to put relevant content in front of the right people at the right time. We need to build, brand awareness, engagement, and trust. And we need to start talking to them about stuff that they're interested in.
Yeah. Robert, something you said is so true. That I've often consulted with companies around, which is when you are a brand new logo, you don't have that recognition. Just the more that you can show your market that you truly are an insider, that you know things about their market that they didn't even know themselves, or even the top players have not told them. That definitely sets you apart, and it all comes from everything you mentioned. Deep research, looking at the account, looking at the buying groups, and then you can actually send messages out or make calls and have scripts that truly show, wow, this person not only knows my company, but knows this space and knows something about this space that is quite unique. And all of a sudden, that logo becomes memorable to them for those reasons.
Yeah, I like that.
A little bit of psychology goes a long way, and empathy. I really lean hard on that word, both as in my day-to-day life, but I feel like that has shown the best results for me in the marketing that I've done as a consultant and with my own business. I do want to kind of switch gears and enter the wide world of AI. I know that's a very hot topic right now. The first question's out of the gate, and I'm going to lead with Brandon because he is unusually quiet. Where are you seeing AI or automation actually deliver some results today? It could be a step, it could be just just research, hit it.
Yeah, I have strong opinions about AI, and I will say that, first of all, you have to understand how AI works and what it does and how it actually processes information. And really, it's just taking a large amount of information and condensing it down. And large language models, it has all this information to look into. And that's why, depending on the tool you use, you'll have worse hallucinations because it's running off from all of this prior data. And if it doesn't have the right context, then it's going to give you a poor result. And that's when you have to use the tools in the right way. And so you have to provide the right context. Otherwise, it's not going to find the right answers. And you also have to make sure that you're using the right tool for the job. And I would say there's a lot of tools now. Even Apollo has AI features built in now. HubSpot has Breeze. There's a ton of different opportunities to use AI, but really to get a good high quality result, it's just about providing enough context and using the right method. And so as an example, if you wanted to, I worked previously as a director of RevOps at a marketing AI platform company, and we wanted to know how many number of attorneys was at a firm. So you could web scrape it, but different websites are built differently. So if you tell an AI agent, hey, get me an accurate number of attorneys at a law firm, sometimes it's going to work, and other times it's not going to work. It's going to guess. And that's another component of AI is it tries to appease you. It tries to give you something to say, hey, I helped like in some way, but that doesn't mean that it's correct. And so you really have to find use cases that provide enough context and accuracy to get a good output. So that particular use case didn't really work well for AI, although it did help us to have some semblance of, for some accounts it worked, other accounts it didn't. And when you actually go and check the results, and I tried multiple different tools to do this, when you go and check the results, it's not consistent. And so you really have to find use cases that are more obvious. So like, as an example, headquarter locations for those firms, right? Because that's always going to be on a locations page or a contact page or about page, and you can give that context to AI. Whereas anything that's like very custom, sometimes you have to do either layers of AI research, or honestly, the best way to do it is to use hard data that you get from a system like Apollo and give that information to AI. The best use cases are if you give hard data like that and then you ask it to give you a summary or some way that you can combine your brand messaging. So maybe for an email, you ask it based on the information that you're providing directly, hey, give me an email based on all this personalized information. That's the best ways to use it, because you're not asking it to try to find like pie in the sky answers. You're giving it the information directly that it needs.
So you're saying AI SDRs are not a thing yet? You can't just fully automate it and just build a bunch of agents?
So I've tried AI SDRs before, and they don't work, but that's a hot take. I would say that any level of sales requires a relationship. So if I'm going to call somebody, there should be a good reason, should be relevant, should be timely. There should be a level of empathy. It should just be a good reason to call. And if you're cold calling, that doesn't mean that cold calling is bad. It just means that you have to make sure that you're calling the right people at the right times. Otherwise, it's very annoying and not relevant. And when an AI SDR is calling, they're not going to have the context that they need and the relationship building aspects. They're just going to ask, hey, do you need this right now? Book a demo and hard sell right away. And that's not how you do a proper cold call. And the same thing with emails. It's going to be hard sell, very much like book a demo. It's not going to be discovery. It's not going to be how can I help, those sort of things. And so I'm sure at some point it would get there, but I personally think that we have a long ways to go to see the level of quality increase.
It sounds like the in-between factor is the assistance. And like, I know like HubSpot talks about it all the time. I'm sure Apollo, demand-based, Robert, just the idea of there is a lot of information to know before you have a conversation. It can help delineate that, maybe pull out the important facts. Yes, you should probably do that extra layer of research to validate, because it sounds really weird where you're like, I have this empathetic, really powerful message I want to say to you, and here's why. And someone's like, I'm not that person. That's not my company. That is not my problem.
And that happens.
It happens so often. I'm like, it's okay that there's a little bit of that. Stephanie, is there an AI tool, you can name it, or just like what it does, that you all are leveraging that you found to be really successful?
Yeah, we have a couple. For me, I'm still looking at AI as an opportunity for efficiency across the sales organization to increase capacity. So that's the way I'm looking at it, not a way to replace human action. So we do use Glean across our entire organization at Bell. And we've done some pretty cool things with making sure that our Gong instance, right, our CRM, even like what we're using in, say, User Gems or Sixth Sense is all connected. And so specifically for demo, one of the things that I've loved that we do have created a prompt where we simply enter the company's name in this prompt, and it'll give us everything from the Gong call that we want to go into our demo deck of the things that were most important to them and their pain points, so that my sales team is not spending time filling those out on their own. So that's one small example. The other thing that I personally love, I've got a very large team, right? We're almost 200 in just my product line. And so I'm going in there and saying like, hey, I saw this logo come through. Talk to me about the pain points and what did the seller do and what could have they done differently? And I'm getting that like in my browser in the moment when I need an answer to something, which I absolutely love from just a visibility perspective. So that is my favorite tool right now. User Gems has been exceptionally helpful for us when it comes to our ABM motion and more of our upmarket side as well. We've seen some good success there. But my favorite tool personally as a leader has been Glean.
I love the AI summaries. As a manager and helping other orgs, the ability to have insights and unique reporting and drill down, especially if you have a Gong or Fathom, whatever you're using to like help accentuate tone, like responsiveness. I actually do have to, like I said, there'll be a little shamelessly plugging in here. I do have to give a shout out to HubSpot Breeze, because as growth has grown a lot this year, being able to pop into my service team and sales team's conversations, and there's like a little sentiment rating bar. Anytime it's not green, I'm like, let me do a little bit more digging, which is like one prompt these days. It has allowed me to be stickier within my own business. I've really appreciated that. Renee, one of the first things that you and I talked about when I popped into Apollo Next was some of the new AI capabilities. What's one that you have found to be really empowering and successful with Apollo?
Yeah, so first and foremost, Stephanie, yeah, shout out to Glean. They were a speaker at our Apollo Next conference. I love working with them. They are fantastic. Hands down, Chris, I would say that the best tool I've been working with this past year has been Perplexity's Open Research AI. We recently published a case study with them. They are baked into our Apollo AI power-ups feature. And they're basically research agents. And what I've noticed is that customers often come in looking for not just the right people, but the right people at the right time. And in order to find the right time, Perplexity has been a key partner in that I typically am able to build them 3 research agents that stack upon each other. The first one is for context, which is like a custom company overview that just gives you a full overview of the company you're researching. The second is an account fit score that then compiles what would be buying triggers from the open web. And the more that it finds, it produces a score, right? And has that company overview baked into it. So it's now triaging with that. And then the third one is a go-to-market motion classifier, which is the angle. And then that basically can get plugged into an AI prompt that can shoot the value propositions accordingly to each person that you're outreaching based on the information that it found at the account level. So now my customers get context, urgency, and angle for all of the accounts that they're prospecting to. which allows them to find accounts that have higher urgency, know exactly how to go after them, and then find the right people inside of those accounts. With all of that information, that Perplexity outputs being recycled, if you will, for personalization at scale. It's been a wonderful partnership, and love creating those and working actually with the team to fully productize these templates now so that every Apollo user can have access to them and not need me to build them.
I remember Andy doing that. It was like one of the last keynote conversations during that conversation with Perplexity. That was really, really good. Robert, kind of marginally jokingly, I know that you're not the technology guy per se.
Sure. Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I think AI is unquestionably going to be a multiplier for ABM. In practical terms right now, whilst of course it's not me doing it, as you've obviously gleaned already, Christopher, but some of the agencies I work with are doing very smart stuff with AI. So one of them in particular has developed an agentic approach to AI where they're knitting multiple tools together. And in that context, the first thing they're doing is in-depth account research or industry/sector research. And whereas I used to do this with offshore teams, and it would take 10 days, now, I won't say it takes 10 minutes, but, it's pretty quick. And of course, the cost has plummeted on a per piece of research or per study. So I think insight, which is a mission critical element of any ABM program, can be really accelerated, and the cost can be reduced massively using AI. I think the next thing up is, whilst I wouldn't suggest that you delegate your content creation to AI, I think you still need human creativity and inference right up front. But in terms of, let's say, well, we're going to create a piece of content for an industry, then we take our research to maybe 10, 20, 30, 50 accounts in that industry. You then overlay that research into that master content, and you create personalized versions for each account. So one of the agencies calls that the content remix engine, which I think is a nice analogy. So you've got your master content that's being created for a human, for an industry. You've then got 50 versions of that content created potentially, in a few hours. And then even beyond that, you can then look at different personas, and I mean real individuals within those companies, and say, well, what's Bill interested in? What's Bob interested in? What's Pete interested in? I should pick a girl. What's Sarah interested in? And then you can create a personalized version for them. So I think that content remix is a really interesting idea for AI. And then probably the final piece in the stuff I've seen is actually, how do you report back to the business? How do you create stories that are as relevant as possible for different stakeholders? So you could take the same outputs, if you like, from your program and create a version for your CFO or your CRO or your CMO, where they're getting the kind of stuff that's going to excite them. So I think without question, AI is a multiplier. And even for an old guy like me that's not a techie, when I was speaking, a week or two back at the keynote I mentioned to you, as far as I'm concerned, AI is one of the three kind of absolute drivers now that are going to accelerate ABM. They're going to help with scale and personalization. And the only caveat, if you like, to the AI story is, I think that's about acceleration and doing the heavy lifting, but it's not about empathy. It's not about strategy. It's not about trust. So I made the analogy of left brain and right brain. So left brain is the AI, and right brain is the human. So then you've got human plus, or rather artificial plus human intelligence. And that, I think, is a winning combination.
Robert, people have often asked me where do I think this is all headed. And I often say that once AI has fully democratized personalization at scale, the next battle will be copywriting, where you will actually need true copywriters kind of prompting behind the scenes to produce outputs that are much more, to your point, emotive and really trigger something in the people we're reaching out to. I often use this example, which everybody seems to get. Imagine, Chris, that I sent you an email and it said, one email said, hey, Chris, because you're director at growth, blah, blah, blah. And the other email said, hey, Chris, remember when you became director at growth, blah, blah, blah. Very different type of copy and style that can totally change how you are leveraging the personalization of AI. at scale, and it will be what makes the differentiator moving forward.
Yeah, I like that, Renee. And I mean, I think the other catch is, we can all create more and more and more and more content using AI. We could all do it ourselves. We could be knocking out copy every half an hour, but then I think it's just a race to the bottom where everybody's going to end up sounding the same and looking the same. So I think we have to use AI in an intelligent way, where we're briefing it and prompting it correctly. We're assessing the quality of what comes out of that. And I think if you've got human creating the master content and then using AI for the heavy lifting or the acceleration, then you're in a great place. If you're delegating your original thinking and copy to AI, then I think, it's a rocky road and not a good place to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Red flags all around when you just start doing stuff like that. It does. We're with the end of the fiscal year for most businesses, we're now into like budgeting season. Stephanie kind of alluded to this fact that like there's a lot of traditional orgs that are used to you set the numbers and there's like a trickle down effect of KPIs and calls needing to be made, meetings booked. With that same mindset, typically in those types of orgs, CFOs are kind of trained to, okay, where do I make the investment? How much do I make? And then it's fixed. For anybody, are we starting to have the conversations about maybe like experimental budgets for AI? How are we talking to CFOs about making the right decisions on budgeting for next year?
Yeah, I mean, so what I'll say is we're actually a June to July fiscal. And so we are in the middle of our year. And we did ask for additional budget to start testing across the organization, specifically around AI. And we just concluded one of those tests, right? We tested Apollo. I'm sorry, not Apollo. That's in my head because you're talking about Apollo. We tested Reggie AI just as a console, right, to the sales organization, which includes things like a power dialer and some of those automated, email response tools. And what I'll say is I'm not going to share the result of it, but it takes a long time to pilot a product. And if we go back to what Brandon was saying, it also isn't going to work in a short-term environment because you have to invest the time to train that tool. You don't plug it in and it automatically just works because it said it was going to work, right? You have to invest training, ICP, you have to review, give it feedback on an ongoing basis. And so one of the things that I've provided feedback to our team on is we just took all this time to put all of these individual AEs on this new platform to learn it, to test it. And we only wanted to test it for 4 months. And now we're saying we didn't necessarily get some of the results that we wanted. And we're surprised, right? And now are we going to do that again? And it starts to take away from what is the purpose of AI? The purpose of AI is efficiency. And now we're just actually like flipping that on its head and making it inefficient because of some of these tests. So my personal opinion on this is we've got to test and we've got to explore, but we also just have to go all in and invest, because otherwise you're going to keep testing and not getting the outcomes that you want because your testing portions are too, or your testing timelines are too small. And so that's my take on this. We are testing. I think what they'll probably ask you to do at the CFO office is, cool. Where are you going to reduce to make up for that testing area? And what are the efficiencies of capacity that you expect to get from an ROI perspective? So be ready for that conversation. But I think testing is key. Defining what a test is even more important than asking for the test itself.
I mean, I think that is a direct correlation to the headcount drops that we've seen, and not only just tech companies, but in the United States, it's like a very dirty secret that there are huge headcount drops in marketing, in sales, and it's like it's sad, but that's where the decision has to come. The money has to come from somewhere. Robert, what are you seeing? How are you handling these conversations?
Well, I mean, there's no question that there's been a lot of layoffs at a lot of very large organizations, and clearly AI is being used as, quote, the excuse or the rationale for that. There's also a lot of data out there saying that most companies can't show the ROI of their AI investments. And those two pieces of information seem counterintuitive. If AI is so wonderful that we're laying off all these people, but then we can't show the return on investment, then something's not quite right there. And I do think that in some ways AI is being used as the fall guy, you know, to downsize organizations that maybe have got bloated during COVID or post-COVID, etc. So I don't think that's right, but it's just a fact of life, right? In terms of AI really adding value, I mean, I think it already is in terms of doing the heavy lifting and accelerating things. But the question there, and almost back to Stephanie's point, is you need the humans to be creating the right prompts, managing it, assessing it, and using it in a constructive way. And the idea that you could just outsource the human jobs to AI and assume everything will be great, I think is very naive. And that may be why companies are struggling to show the ROI. You know, I think it's AI plus HI, if you like, in the human intelligence that we need, you know, not one or the other.
Yeah,
I thought we all are like, oh, we have so much. Everyone wants to talk on this. I have to say one thing though, because I think it's important. Like if we go back to science class in the 5th grade, right? What is one of the things that we learned is you need variables and you need a constant. There is no constant right now. Like there is zero constants. So we keep blaming, oh, we're not grading the efficiency in AI, and there's like, we're not able to show you the ROI, and the ROI they want is like more capacity per rep, right? Or you know, less dollars in the budget going towards, you know, marketing campaigns. But there's also a lot of volatility in like marketing top of funnel right now, and we're not separating the two of those things to understand. And so that is something that I struggle with a little bit, is like, where's the constant in the test? There isn't one. Like there absolutely isn't one. And so I think that's something that I would love like everyone's take on if they've figured that out, because I sure haven't.
I think you named it pretty well in the very beginning, though, by having the dashboard that shows sales in flight and, you know, traditional sales versus your ABM test. I think that's a good constant to bounce against. There's also this like Gantt chart of life, right? All these individual tools and processes and usage are all being learned and evolved. So there's a bunch of stuff happening there. Humans are going through their own life cycle of the year. And then to find an organization that is as large, at some point, sometimes some of the empathy disappears with people. So, right, everything becomes transactional. So these weird Y factors really change how you have to look at things, but not all organizations are willing to change. And that's a big part of what we try to tackle at Growth.
I was going to say to Stephanie's point, like adoption is a huge sort of like anchor that helps a lot. Like, so adoption, growth, and retention of customers for us at Apollo, and I would encourage all organizations to do this. I was hired into a division a year ago called Apollo Labs, and it was really meant to be an experimental division with a very small team, testing a lot of these tools that we've been discussing on this call around AI. And as you heard from some of the horror stories earlier on, it wasn't all roses. But in the end, it led to a new division at Apollo called Go-to-Market Engineering that merged with our customer success to deliver a higher caliber of service for our customers, truly valuable meetings, and also helping our retention down the road. So from this experimental division, we enhance a major sector of Apollo's workforce, and our customers are the better for it. So that should be the measuring stick, if you will, of whether an experimental division is working, is how it ultimately adopts and integrates into your own company to deliver great results for your customers.
There's so much to be said about mindset and company culture into the success of using these tools, and the ability to give the grace to try and experiment new things without having severe penalties for being in the iterative process, which, as we've talked about, it can be 3, 6, 8 months to really produce the CFO tried and true net dollars in portion of things. And not surprising, this hour has blown by. Like, I'm so honored to be like in a virtual room with all of you. Robert, I am so thankful to have been able to reconnect with you. You just truly are such a light in this space. I deal with like the hard conversations all the time, and I know we don't talk often, but man, I have been cheering from you across the ocean I really appreciate your time, Renee. You instantly were a light. I mean, I can say that, Stephanie, you're great. Just met you too, Brandon. Obviously loved you. Thank you for joining Growth. That wraps up this hour, the whole go-to-market thing. So I really appreciate everybody's time. For everybody tuning in, this will go on YouTube. We'll share all the fun links about where to get resources and around some of the softwares that we talked about. Thank you to HubSpot and Apollo. And for all of you, have a great rest of your day and good luck, GTM engineering.
Thank you, team.
See you guys.